So I would like to just share that my husband is over there, and we have a new little foster baby who's new into our lives, and he's coming on this journey with us. But in 2008, myself, my husband, and our 3 small children, who are now all adults, felt the call of God to go to Cambodia. We actually lived in Mount Beauty at the time. We'd been in Mount Beauty for 9 years. So we're actually local people. Now, not a easy thing to lift your children out of a beautiful, magnificent part of the world. And I told them that we'd been to Vanuatu before that, on a little tiny island, and I told my kids it was like that. Well, Phnom Penh is nothing like Vanuatu. 3 million people in a noisy city. But, when God calls you, it's very difficult to be disobedient. And I remember we had a pastor visiting our little church over there just before we were leaving, because we had absolutely no idea what God had called us to do in Cambodia. We just knew that he had put the call of God on our lives, and we had to be obedient. And we had a visiting pastor, and they said, "Oh, come out and we'll pray for you. Well, we know you're leaving soon." And they had a word of prophecy, and it said, "You would be a voice for children who have no voice." And at that time, my husband and I, we weren't too sure what that meant. And with prophecy, you always put it at the back of your mind, and if it's true prophecy, then it will come to pass. So we knew that God was going to give us a voice for children who had no voice. And I'd like to read from Proverbs 31, 8-9. And this is a really precious scripture, because I think it really is the basis for what we do. It says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and the helpless, and see that they get justice." And, when we went to Cambodia, we did language study for 2 years. I worked for a big organisation as a medical support. And, in the back of our minds, Paul and I were saying, is this what you brought us all the way to Cambodia to do? And we really felt the Lord said, just wait. There's something that we have for you. And like I said, we had no idea. And in Cambodia, there's a lot of poverty. And one person came to us and said, "Would you take a girl on to clean your house and cook for you?" And I said, "Of course I will." "Oh, I'll do it for an orphan." I said, But, we wanted to give her a job. She'd just come out of the orphanage and had no family. And I said, "Yeah, sure, we'll love to take her on, And unfortunately, over time, my money went missing, my son's DS or whatever it's called went missing. And I remember saying to my husband, "I'm not sure if this is really working out. She's taking our stuff. I think she's getting more than we're getting out of this right now." And I'm not a dream or vision person. I'm a pretty practical, simple person. And that night, I said, "Well, on Monday, I'll tell her she's going to leave. I'll let her have a good weekend." And on that Friday night, I was in bed and I had a dream. And I don't usually dream. And in the dream, I saw that she was pregnant. And I saw that she gave birth to a baby boy, because I saw this little baby boy on my floor. And I woke up the next morning and I said to Paul, "Hi, darling." And I said to Paul, "What shall I do with this?" And he said, "Well, just ask her." So I asked her, "Are you pregnant?" She looked at me as if I was crazy. She said, "Why would I be pregnant?" I said, "Okay, it's all right. I'm wrong. That's fine." Anyway, over the weekend, she'd had a fall and went to the hospital and found out, they did a pregnancy test, found out she was pregnant. So that Monday, she came to our house and she said, "I'm pregnant." And I said, "Let me measure your stomach," because I'm a midwife. And I said, "You're 20 weeks pregnant." She said, "I couldn't be." Took her for an ultrasound. She was 20 weeks and 2 days. And I said to Paul, "I can't ask her to leave now, can I? Not only is she an orphan, but she's a single pregnant woman in Cambodia." And so we kept her on, and she never stole from us again. But I went with her when she delivered her baby, and she delivered a little baby boy. and she called him Pro Poop. Well, when I told my kids his name was Pro Poop, they thought that was hilarious. But there he was on our floor in our house, just as the dream had told us. And I said to Paul, I wonder if God's using this to tell us what we should be doing. And so myself and 2 Cambodian friends started researching in Cambodia about single women with crisis pregnancy. And what we found was, this was in 2009, we started research, we found that 21% of the maternal death rates in Cambodia were from backyard abortions. So 21% of maternal deaths were from women that were having abortions outside of clinics and dying. We also found that there was 89% of abortions were not done professionally. And we found that women had no choice but to either have an abortion or abandon their babies once they were born. And we also found that there was absolutely no crisis pregnancy service in the whole of Cambodia reaching these women. And what we also found was that from our research, these girls and women, when they're with their crisis pregnancy, it occurred because of rape, mainly rape, trafficking, incest, and abandonment. And at that time, the blame and responsibility was solely placed on them because of the gender inequality in the society. So whether they were raped or trafficked, it was still their fault. And that was shocking for me. And that the shame and stigma of these unplanned pregnancies resulted in more discrimination, more exclusion to women and girls who were already extremely vulnerable. The women were often rejected by their families and the greater society, leaving them feeling isolated and alone. They couldn't go home. They had nowhere to go. They had no practical or emotional support. And what really amazed me was that this was God's idea. We didn't go to Cambodia to start a crisis pregnancy service, but our God saw these women. And I think it was Joy, or I can't remember. We think of women today in other countries that can't provide for their children. And, we all want what's best for our children. We will go to great lengths in Australia to get them the best education. Here they just wanted to be able to care for their children. And in many cases, they saw that the only way out for themselves was to have an unsafe abortion, or once the baby was born, to abandon them or to sell them. Babies get sold in Cambodia. So in 2010, by the grace of God and by his... And then, it was funny, that word came back to us. You will be a voice for children who have no children. And I went to a prayer meeting and I said to these women, pray for me and for my 2 Cambodian friends. We're thinking of, starting an organisation to help women and girls with crisis pregnancy. And this woman didn't know anything about the prophecy and said, oh God, let them be a voice for children who have no voice. And it just was like, I knew without a doubt that this was what God wanted to do for these women, these mothers. So in 2010, myself and 2 Cambodians started Mother's Heart in our lounge room. We had no idea what we were doing. If God had said, oh, Katrina and Paul and your children, you're going to Cambodia and you're going to start an international NGO and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, I would have said, no. And God is so gracious with us. He only tells us little bits to not frighten us and to not overwhelm us, but to just give us enough light for the next step, so that each step of the way we're relying and depending and trusting him. So we started in 2010 with 3 of us, had no idea about how to get funds, how to write a concept paper, how to do anything. But we knew God was with us. Someone gave us an office, and I said to my husband, I've got an office, but we don't even have a computer. And he said, I'm having coffee with someone today. And he came back with an envelope, and in there was $500, and the person had wrote for computer. and they knew nothing about it. So I just knew that God's hand was on this work. So we started in 2010 and now it's 2012, so we've been going 12 years. And what is Mother's Heart? Mother's Heart is the first and still the only crisis pregnancy service in the whole of Cambodia, looking after the mums, young mums. I remember when we first started, one of our first clients was an 11-year-old. And 40% of our clients in our bottom bong office are under 18, and they just told me we've got another 12-year-old. And a lot of these girls, you know, they're from the country. So what does Mother's Heart do? We're the first crisis pregnancy counselling service. Actually, we're the social system for this demographic. Because in Cambodia, the social system, I think at the time they had 8 social workers for the whole of Cambodia. So really not a social system happening there. You know, we've got no Centrelink, we don't have free medical care, we don't have housing. If a woman who has a crisis pregnancy and rejected by her family, she's usually on the streets, and that's where she ends up. So we provide crisis pregnancy counselling. We have a pregnancy support program where we give emergency housing, medical care, maternal nutrition. We've even got our own childcare centre because a lot of our mums don't have any family, and for them to be able to keep their babies, work, they need to have a safe place to place their babies while they work. We also do a lot of family mediation because if, you know, being a single mum without any family support, it's hard work. So if we can get the girl back into her family, then we know she has a community helping her raise her baby. We also advocate that not one child grows up in an institution, that each one of these babies, they grow up with their mum, or they go to kinship, or they end up in permanent foster families, because we know from history that institutionalising our children is not what they need. They need a loving, secure family to thrive and be nurtured in. And that's what a mother's heart is. A mother's heart is to nurture and see our children grow. And that's the mother's heart of God, to see us nurtured and growing in his love. At present, we have 87 women in our program and babies. And like I said, a lot of those are underage. Over the 10 years, we did our 10-year celebration, and we looked back and we were able to transform 1,504 lives during those 10 years and bring hope and God's love to them where there was no love and where there was no hope. And I think what a wonderful privilege to be able to be God's hands and feet, be his arms, lots of hugs and cuddles. I tried not to, but I couldn't help myself. And I was looking back, like I've been in Australia 5 years now, and my team runs Mother's Heart, and I still am very active. And I haven't been able to get back because of COVID. And that was really difficult for me to really stay in touch. But I remember I went back and I read this, and it says, "A voice of Mother's Heart women. My family looked down on me, but you'd help me be a strong mother through my crisis pregnancy. I am who I am today because of Mother's Heart." So I rang one of the social workers and I said, I want a story. I know a lot of stories. I was part of a lot of journeys with a lot of women and saw miraculous things happen in their life. And I said, do you have a recent story that really touches your heart? And so she shared with me, she spoke it over Messenger to me. And I want to just tell you this young girl's story. We'll call her Sockling, that's not her real name, but she's given me permission to share her story today. Sockling's parents died when she was a little girl, so she was left as an orphan. And she went from shelter to shelter, running away, and then ended up on the streets of Phnom Penh. And, you know, there's some really beautiful people in this world, and this lovely Cambodian woman who ran a restaurant on the riverfront saw her living on the streets and decided to give her a job in her restaurant so that she could work, have somewhere to live and have food. And I'm sure Sockling was extremely grateful to get off the streets because it's not a safe place to be. And her boss noticed that she was not acting normal, a bit sick. So she did a pregnancy test, as we all do when we're sick. But I don't know why, but she did. She did a pregnancy test. And she found out that she was pregnant. So she said to her, how did you get pregnant? And she said, when I was on the street, I was raped many times by many men over and over again. And to the point now, she cuts her hair really short and dresses, my staff said she dresses like a tomboy so as not to attract the attention of men anymore. So this boss referred her into our program through another NGO, and we've found a safe place for her to live. She was very shy, very reserved, and her caseworker said that now she's more confident, she's talking, and she just gave birth on the 18th of April to a little baby boy who was 3.4 kilos, so a very healthy size. When you're an orphan and you have no family, her first thought was, I'm going to have to give my baby up. I don't have the resources to be able to raise my own child. And then, you know, it's amazing when you give birth and you hold that baby in your arms for the first time, the love of a mother just overtook her. And so she's now considering, with the support of Mother's Heart, whether she can keep her son and be the mother that her son deserves. And one of her reasons she didn't want to raise her son was because she didn't think she had the capacity. But she said, I don't want my son's life to turn out like mine. You know, I went from shelter to shelter. I didn't have a mother's love. And so we don't know what the end of her story or her son's story is going to be, but I tell you what, Mother's Heart will do all they can to support her in her decision making and supporting her through her life with a job. And we work hard on getting our women jobs or vocational training because we believe that they need to be sustainable. And so we just, if you could pray for Sockling, that she comes to know the love of God, because I think that is what's going to turn around her thinking and help her to be the mum that she never had. And so we will do all we can to support and love her. So we have many stories like that, you know, even more. When I first went there, I didn't think I could hear any more tragic stories, but the next day there was another tragic story. We've had 11 women in our program with HIV, and we were able to support them all through their pregnancies, and not one of their babies became positive with the HIV virus. So we were extremely proud of ourselves for being able to do that. And I have a wonderful team of Cambodians who are so passionate about their own people, which is what you want. And we have a wonderful board of directors. I've got 3 Cambodian men on my board of directors, and they are just so passionate to see Mother's Heart continue. We'd love to. I was talking to Margaret, and she was up in Poi Phet, which is this horrible place where people get trafficked across the border, and one of our offices is right there. And my general manager there said, we can only do this small area. We know that there's women everywhere that need our support, but this is all we can do now. So, you know, the job's not getting less, it's getting more because of the way the world is today. You know, the economic crisis, women are sold. We had some of our young girls sold to China as brides because of the one-child policy. So we ended up getting women back from China that thought they were going to work there and ended up being sold as brides and come back and they're pregnant. So, you know, there's a lot going on in Cambodia for young girls and women. And we're there to see that they have a voice. And not only be a voice for them, but that they have a voice. And that's why this girl wanted to share her story, because this is her voice. And we want to see women having a voice. We want to see society changed about how they look at women who have had a crisis pregnancy. We want to see that we can reach more and more women for the love of God. So, yeah, Mother's Heart is still my passion. And I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to share today that God has a mother's heart. So happy Mother's Day to you all. And just want to thank you for letting me be here today to celebrate the mother's heart of God.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. That's perfect.